So, Lauren, I have a very serious question.
I see.
Should construction graduates have work-life balance?
Oh, that is a serious question.
I'll tell you why I bring it up, because only, I think it was Thursday last week, I had two conversations and they were literally like 10 minutes apart, right? And it was interesting that they happened so close together on the same day. First conversation was talking to the owner of a tier 3 commercial builder, and I was having the graduate conversation, and we were talking in general about what he looks for in when he hires graduates for the business. And he was all about attitude and passion, and he sort of made the comment, for him, you need to have worked in the industry through university. He's not interested if you've kind of just worked at McDonald's or, and
Okay.
each their own. Everyone's got their own opinions, but he wants people in his business that live and breathe the industry, is passionate about the industry, willing to put in the hard yards, willing to do whatever it takes. And then literally like 10 minutes later, I have a very contrasting conversation with a graduate saying, he's in a business, it's a small business, he's really struggling, he's working 6 days a week, and he's looking for a role that can offer less hours. Now, admittedly, it has to be said that he was still studying. So he was finding it really difficult to juggle university and a demanding job. But it was just interesting that we had these contrasting and polarizing conversations 10 minutes apart, and one with an employer and one with an employee.
Oh.
So we've got both points of view are valid, right? So
True, yes.
So you can look at it from the perspective of the builder. If you're a business and you want to employ graduates, I always say to graduates, you have to understand the context in which you take the job and in which you get employed, and it's different to any other dynamic of the transaction, or not transaction, the engagement between the employer and an employee. If you get hired for a job, for a wage, so you're doing a job for an hourly rate, or you're doing, let's say, labouring on site, right? Yep. So you're getting, you move a pile of bricks from here to here, and it takes 2 hours to do it, and I've paid you $50 to do it. Job done. That's one way of doing it.
Yep.
But when you don't know how to move the bricks from one end to the next, which is like a graduate really, you're not moving any bricks. I'm spending 2 hours teaching you how to move the bricks, and by the end of that 2 hours, I've paid you $50. I've also paid the project manager $200 that's shown you how to move the bricks, but no bricks have been moved.
Good point.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, yeah.
I've never actually explained it like that. I've just came up with that analogy. I don't know, it might be a bad analogy. I might listen back to it and go, what are you talking about? Talking absolute garbage.
No, I think it's good, because it's the difference between like doing, perhaps a simple job, but learning how to do something that will earn you money in the future.
Yeah. The point I'm making is it's an investment. What's the definition of investment? You pay money, you put in effort, you're getting nothing in return in the short term. Right. So when an employer is taking on a graduate, they're paying them a salary, which a lot of people think is, well, the employers think the salaries are for graduates are ridiculously overinflated, and the graduates think they're not getting paid enough.
Same always the story.
But they're not only paying the salary, they are also investing the time in the training from the project managers, the directors, the whoever, and sometimes external training companies. So it's time and money. So you can take the salary and double it, and some people say double and some more in terms of what is the real cost for a business to hire that graduate in the first year. Now, what do we do when we make investments? You look at risk, right?
You do.
Like if you play the stock market and you high risk, high reward, or you kind of balance risk. So if you're hiring a graduate that is sort of lukewarm and want to talk about work-life balance, would you not think that there's a high risk as an employer?
You probably would. You'd be worried that this was a person that wasn't ready to go the extra mile, that perhaps wasn't really invested, given the amount of investment that you're about to put into them.
So from the employer's perspective, there you can see why they want someone with it. But now let's look at it from the other perspective, from the employee or the graduate. There's many reasons why people may want different things. It could be, and I think let's break it into two categories as to why people would want work-life balance, and or we can talk about money as well. Time and money always go together. So we talk about how much is the job paying and how many hours do I have to work for the money that I get paid. But sometimes the reasons are practical, and sometimes the reasons are more psychological, or we can say attitude. So someone plays footy and they need to leave at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday or whatever to go and play footy. Well, that's a values thing. It's most businesses would probably support that because we value sport so highly in our culture. So that's one thing.
And we've seen that. We've seen young people that have semi-professional careers in sport that are managing to balance those things with the support of their employers.
Yeah.
So that has happened, yeah.
It could be that someone is studying still, like the other person I spoke to, that's just overwhelmed with too much, taken on too much at the same time. Or it could be personal reasons. It could be family reasons. We've seen graduates with young families already. That's got to balance that. We've seen examples that are maybe more rare, but we've seen examples of people having to care for family members. Yeah. So I guess we can say there are practical examples as to why people need work-life balance or flexibility around time, but also if we come into money, why they need more money because they need to pay for something. But then I think more often than not, it's more of an attitude thing. It's more about the mindset that you go into the career with. It's not a practical thing that's making a decision for you. And that, I think, is the problem. That is the thing that employers look for that comes up as a red flag.
It is. It is a red flag, and I think when we talked earlier about this, and I only want to mention it briefly because I know everyone's sick of talking about COVID, but I think a lot of people really thought about well-being and balance in COVID because they were working from their homes and they were working in different ways and their hours might have been different. And so people are very aware of this buzzword of work-life balance now. And so even if it's not an issue because they have not even started their career yet, it's something that's sort of in their mind as a question to ask. But I can imagine it being a very unappealing one to the person looking to employ that person in front of them.
Well, I find it off-putting if I speak to someone who wants an opportunity and a foot in the door, and they ask me what are the hours. It's immediately off-putting, and it's I always try and be a bit more balanced in a way because we have to look deeper than just what's on the surface level. But it's immediately. It's now is an issue that we need to deal with. But for me, it comes down to this job versus career thing. I talk about it quite often to people, and it's making a transition in the mindset and the attitude from when you're going through working, the bricks example that I mentioned, trading dollars for an amount of time, whereby it's really looking at this long-term investment. And then I think it's important to understand what is your ambition and what are you trying to achieve in your career. And I think to me that goes back to the reason why you went into construction and did your degree in the first place. So why do people do construction management degrees or civil engineering degrees? I think broadly we can probably look at it from two perspectives again. We can say, finished school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went and spoke to the career person, spoke to my dad, spoke to my mum, spoke to my uncle. Someone knows someone who works in construction. Kind of seemed like a cool thing to do, but really I wanted to go and do my gap year and party some more. So out of all the courses, the construction management one seemed close enough is good enough, so I went and did it. Delays my entry into the real world by another 4 years, do the construction management degree, and then you go, well, I should probably go and get a job. That's, maybe I'm not being unkind there of some example, but that's maybe an extreme way of doing it.
Yeah.
Or one end of the spectrum. And I think it's those people that then come into the industry and go, well, okay, so how much is what am I doing? How much is it paying? What's the hours?
They're the people for whom it will always be a job. And it's a job in that first interview. It's not, they're not thinking forward. They're not thinking kind of with their heart about what they want to do and why they're doing it.
But can you have a job like that in a commercial construction space, in construction management? I don't know.
Look, I think construction is notoriously high pressure and fast paced. And if you are going to be successful and if you're going to thrive, whether that sort of be personally or professionally, there has to be some passion and some drive in there to get something done.
I think it's not just, it's high pressure, but it's also difficult. It's very difficult. There's so much complexity. There's so much, pressure and everything else. So you can't to do well just to perform at an adequate level. I think it's a big step that you have to make as a person, as an individual, both personally and technically, skill-wise, but also who you become to become that project manager that everyone wants to be. And I think it's like using the sports analogy. You don't turn up playing for a premiership football team by just sort of running around a little bit and sort of just keeping fit. You kind of have to be all in. Yeah. And it's if you want to be a project manager in a tier 1 or even any tier, you kind of have to be all in.
Yes.
Otherwise, you just won't get there.
No, you need to be, hyper focused on making the improvements and breaking the skills down, just like that professional athlete.
So then the question comes: if someone comes in and I have that conversation about how much is paying and what are the hours, you struggle to see how they come at it from that perspective of, I'm all in. I want that. That's my goal. Like the person that turns up at the footy training who wants to be a premiership football player doesn't ask how many kilometres are we going to run today or how many drills are we going to do or what today. They like, I'm here, I'm all in.
Yes.
When everyone else is finished, I'm going to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think those people that are really clear on what they want to do and their passion, they go all in and they do really well, and the question doesn't really come up about work-life balance or anything. But then we can also say, well, that's not the only way to live life, is it?
Look, and it's not. It's not, but it's probably not a great way to start a career for someone who's career-oriented.
No, but I think the difficulty with commercial construction is that the industry demands it.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's very difficult to get by without being that deep into it, like that full on into really spending the time and the energy and developing your skills and yourself to get that to that level. But I think then people, when you don't have that, I don't think there's anything wrong with you as a person when you don't feel that deep sort of drive to be for construction. At the end of the day, work is still work, right? It's still something that we have to do to pay bills. So I don't think anyone, if you don't have it naturally, you can kind of fake it, because I think you either do or you don't have it. So I think most people are probably in the middle. Maybe they've had that drive early on in their career and it's sort of dissipated a bit. But I think if you feel that you wanting to ask that question in the first year of your career, I think it's worthwhile maybe looking at some alternatives in the industry, because there's other career pathways that provide maybe not work-life balance as such. Everything in commercial construction is quite intense, but I think there's other pathways that maybe, like the estimating pathway is something that we always talk about. Now, estimators, please, I'm not saying that estimating is easy or an easier pathway. I think it's a pretty hard gig.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, it's not connected so rigidly to the timeline and the delivery moment by moment of the project. I think it's got deadlines. So if you've got a lot of tenders, especially at the moment, I think estimators are all working their asses off at the moment.
Oh, look, absolutely.
I think it's a tough time for estimators because there's so many tenders that you have to put in, and I don't know what the win rates are of the average estimator, but it's probably a little bit like recruitment. Often you do a lot of work and then you don't get the project over the line. But the part of that problem, I think, that why it's so difficult for estimators is just there's not enough of them.
Well, there's not, and I think estimating is a great career, either a stepping stone into construction or a long-term pathway. I had an opportunity to speak to some estimators recently. I was working with a graduate who's finishing up mid-year, and he had done some time in estimating during his degree, a short cadetship in estimating, and he was trying to consider which pathway to take. Did he want to go down the estimating pathway and make that his career, or was he interested more in the project management, CA, project coordinator pathway? And so I spoke to some estimators on his behalf to gather some information for him. And a lot of them really loved that pathway. I mean, we've talked before about this sort of image in their mind that young people have when we talk about the estimator as a person sitting alone with a computer and a spreadsheet in a dark room that never sees the light of day. And it's very much not like that for a lot of people. It might be for some people in some businesses, but a lot of people I spoke to were like young, sporty guys who sort of fell into estimating through like a graduate program rotation and found they really liked it because it was competitive. It was like, your estimating team was one football team that tended against the other team down the road, and who would win. And in fact, they were often friends with each other, who would rib each other after work on a Friday night about who did and didn't win that tender. But a lot of them did mention that too, that they felt that largely you were able to control that time demand a little bit more. You could, it perhaps wasn't all of the time that you needed to be pulling the long hours, perhaps just before a tender's due. So it had a little bit more flexibility, I think.
I think it's such a rewarding and undervalued career path, or not undervalued, but I don't know what the word is. There's just not enough people that are seriously considering it as a career path, and there's all these misconceptions about it. We'll probably do a whole separate video on estimating. But I was talking to a lady the other day that talked about family and having kids, and how do you work in commercial construction and have a family when you've got to pick up kids from school at 3 o'clock? That's tough.
It's very tough.
It's a tough way to do it. But there are certain roles that you can that makes it more possible than others. If you're a site manager on site, or a site focused person that's connected to the job, having flexibility on time is pretty difficult. So I think, coming back, we've sort of floating a bit too far away from our question. I think should construction management graduates have work-life balance? Number one, if you're seeing it as a job and not a career, you're going to want work-life balance. If you're seeing it as a career and you've got clear goals and you're all in, then it probably won't matter as much to you, especially not in the first few years. If it does matter to you and you still want a career, then you probably need to spend some time thinking about your career choices and not be disillusioned to think that you're going to walk your way into a senior project management role whilst enjoying the flexibility and that everyone wants out there. Because I just think it's, maybe there's some people out there that have achieved it, but I've certainly haven't seen it. And then I think to add to that, then I've always find that there's these sort of undercurrents of culture within subsectors of industry and companies, obviously. Each company have, like we talk about a company culture. And it's a term that gets that gets used and thrown around a lot, culture, but I don't know if people, especially young people coming into the industry, actually understand what that really means and what it means for them.
Yeah.
Some companies will place more value on a work-life balance situation.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing some companies move in that direction. Both bigger tier and smaller companies. They're exceptions, I think, at the moment, but it's it's out there and it's happening. That's something to be aware of in perhaps choosing where you're applying to.
I think there's lots of companies that genuinely want to improve that part of it, but I think it's bloody difficult. How do you do it? Running a construction company, you've got to price work to win it at a price. You've got demands coming at you from all ends of the spectrum of the industry and the world, subcontractors, and there's so much complexity and so many variables and so many layers. So how do you then work in this balance? But I think some companies are doing it better than others, and some actually try their hardest to try and find new innovative ways to do it. But then there are other companies and other places as well that, and I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing, but depending on how close to the end of the spectrum you want to go, but some of them just say, look, construction is construction. Yeah. And you speak to candidates and even young people are like, mate, building's building. Like, what do you want us to say? Like, you get on site, you get there at 7 a.m. and you leave when it's done, right? So if you don't like it, go do something else.
Yeah.
So there are companies that will just be black and white like that, and it's like, it is what it is. If you don't like it, then get out. It's the wrong industry and wrong business for you. And I think the best bit's probably always somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, look, that's true, and it can be a trap. And I know this is a personal thing. It can be a trap to fall into the pressure to stay at your desk for a really long time because everybody around you does it, and that can be difficult to deal with as well. I remember speaking to a young graduate who'd been out for a year who felt that she could finish her work by 6 o'clock at night, but there was all of this pressure with the people around her to stay at her desk until 7 or 8 because that was the company culture. And there's something to be said around that, about if you have finished, perhaps giving yourself the permission to go home, or understanding that if you want to progress further in that company, then you have to do a bit extra and asking yourself whether that's for you.
So it comes down to one of the training people that you and I always listen to, Josh Braun. He always talks about the nature of things and let reality be reality. So if you a graduate or young person coming into the industry, it's worthwhile having some clear vision in terms of what it is, what is the nature of construction within the context of head contractors, within the context of certain sectors, like if you're working in the fit out sector, or you're working in tier 1, or you're working whatever that might be, or whether you go into client side and you work in consulting, or you're working for the developer, or you're working for the client. The nature and the reality of each one of those places is going to be different. And it's like saying if it's cold in winter, and if it rains and you walk outside, you're going to get wet. So if you walk outside and it's raining and you get wet and you complain about it, that's like walking into a big tier 1 and complaining because you're still at your desk at whatever time. It's like, well, this is the game. This is it. Like, what do you so you either do it or you don't.
Yeah. I agree. And I do want to talk about client side more, but, I think to me, the happiest young person in the first few years of their career in construction isn't the one worried about the work-life balance, and isn't the one counting the hours and the pay and how much they're actually earning, but it's the person that's really focused on their goals. That goal can be, because they want to build things, or it could be simple that they want to, reach a certain point and reach a certain amount of money. And this, like we said, there's nothing wrong with being ambitious in different kinds of ways. But, research has shown that when we are striving towards a goal, we are our happiest. So your first few years of your career can be your happiest because your goal is right there. You're having the opportunity to meet it, to learn, to grow. You're seeing all of those steps towards it. It'll be a crazy time, but it should be the happiest time as well.
Is that happiness because of striving towards a goal, or is it just being blissfully naive as to what's coming?
Look, it could be a bit of both, but I just read Dr. Adam Fraser's Strive. It's a really easy read, and it is all about like the human capacity, the need to always be improving. And I know we talk a lot about that on a personal level as well as a professional level. And it is those times when you're working towards something that you feel purposeful and passionate, career-wise. Planning or saving for a trip, suddenly saving money is fun when you're doing it that way. So, that's your happy time if you can view it that way.
So should construction graduates have work-life balance? Depends. If you want to get right to the top, no. Probably not.
No, probably shouldn't be a factor.
There's a big space in the middle. Yep. But if that is important to you, there's also some alternatives, I think. Yeah, and we've talked about some, and we can talk about more. Here's another question. Mm-hmm. Should construction management graduates be solely focused on the dollars? As graduates, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, not in my opinion. There are people out there who will say, well, we work for money, why else do we go to work? But it comes back to that long view, like if you, in your first few years, you are there, you're taking more than you're giving, you are there to develop your career as an investment. They're investing in you, and you're investing in yourself and your career development. I think over the long term, sure, depending on what you want to do, and dollars are important. It comes what I mentioned earlier in the conversation about what is the reason why you're focusing on dollars. Is it everything is more expensive these days? Everyone is trying. It's going to be pretty tough to live on a graduate's wage if you are living by yourself, if you're having to pay rent and all those things. That's bloody hard.
It is hard.
So if someone is saying, look, I need an X amount of number, I'm not living extravagantly, but I need a paycheck of a certain amount to just make ends meet, that's one thing. Yeah. But if you're living with mum and dad still, and you've got some flexibility around you, and the reason why you're wanting the dollars is because you're ego driven, or you believe that you're worth it, or you've got maybe an overinflated opinion of what you're worth,
or what the industry is paying.
Then I think that's a dangerous place to be, because the money will come. The money will definitely come if you're better off picking the right opportunity at a lesser salary. And also the differences in salaries that graduates often and young people squibble over is not very much. And it might seem much at that time in your life, like a $5,000 salary difference over a year is not very much when you've taken the tax out of it and you've broken it down into weeks, or even $10,000. Like, it's a few $100s left or right in a month worth a 20-year career. It's a trajectory that's going to take you onto your career path for the next 10, 20 years. It's a kind of a short-sighted way of looking at it. So, but again, it depends on the individual. Sometimes they might just need that pay packet to make it work for themselves, and that's a different conversation.
Yeah, and that's a big difference to saying to a prospective employer, my friend who works at, let's use Multiplex again, earns 15 grand more than you're offering me, and therefore I feel like I'm worth that as well. That's a different thing. Different builders, different parts of the industry will do that. It's also different. We've seen how the market has changed since COVID, and there was a period after COVID where a lot of graduates, because there was so much opportunity and a real need for them in the industry at the time, were getting quite big salaries. But perhaps now, if your older brother got a job then and was earning a $90 K package,
Mm.
and you're not being offered that, that's not a reflection on you.
Look, I think it's different if you feel like someone is taking the piss out of you. If you feel like you are really you're in a company, you're not being supported, you're not learning, you're getting paid crap money, and you feel like you and the company is getting you to do the work. If you're 4, 5, 6 months out of university and they're paying you 65 grand, but you're actually doing the work of 100 grand CA and there is no CA, and you're just there trying to make the best out of a bad situation. That's a different situation,
That's
right?
true,
Then should you be getting paid more for that? Well, you should probably find a different job then, because you're not learning, you're not developing, you're probably learning bad practice, you're doing things and not in the most ideal way, and that's probably a whole different conversation. But that's where a salary is an issue, because they're just taking advantage out of you. But it happens, but it's not the norm.
No, it's not the norm, and the bigger problem there isn't the dollars, it's the learning opportunity, which, as we've been saying, is the most important thing to look for in those roles early in your career. And if you're not having the opportunity to learn from someone and see that investment back from the company in you, then that is the bigger problem.
I'm going to ask another question, but I think we will then end on that question and do the next video on that maybe next week or whenever we do the next one, is should you do a master's degree?
Look, I'm going to need to throw two things out there before I answer this question. Is that, number one, I used to be a teacher. And so, I see some value in education for education's sake if it's something you feel really strongly about and it's a personal thing. Like, I want to do this because I want to learn more. I also have a master's degree, and I don't think it ever helped me get a job.
Certainly not going to help you get a job. I think, I've got some strong opinions on it, but I think I'll reserve them for the next video.
Fair enough.
Let's wrap up. So, should graduates have work-life balance? Let's say it depends.
It depends.
Thank you.